Good evening and welcome everyone to the Ravenswood City School District Governing Board meeting of September 8th. I will call the meeting at 6:31 PM and I will take roll call. Vice President Shabomaheen.
Here.
Trustee Alexander.
Here.
Trustee Polito.
Present.
Trustee Bloom.
Here.
I myself am present. We have quorum. Moving on to item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Do you have any questions or comments regarding the agenda? As I hear none, I will entertain a motion for item number 2.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to closed session. Before we go into closed session, I will open the floor to anyone of the public who wishes to address the board on any matters that will be discussed during closed session. As I see none, we'll go into closed session at 6:32 PM. Thank you. Good evening and welcome back to open session. We will resume at 7:44 PM. Now to report back on items that were discussed during closed session. For item 3A, there was discussion and direction was given. For item 3B, there was no discussion. For item 3C1, there was no discussion. For item 3C2, there was discussion. Now we will move on to item number 6 from the floor. So if there's any members of the public that wishes to address the board on any matters that are not agendized, now is your time. As I see none, we will move on to item number 7, and I believe we have a comment.
Through the chair, I would like to pull item O from the consent agenda. Sorry, I forgot to do this earlier. But I am an employee of Street Code Academy, so I would like to recuse myself from this vote. So sorry I missed that.
All right, so for item number O, the consideration to approve MOU with Street Code Academy, I will entertain a motion for 7O.
I move to approve item 7O.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion carries 4-0. Going back to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. We have no other questions or comments. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Oh, I apologize. I have to pull something. Oh, sorry. I forgot. Sorry, I need to pull items B, which is the meeting notes, as I was not in attendance during the last board meeting.
All right. Well, that's a good question. Well, I can make a motion.
Yes.
All right, so this is 7B. All right, so I'll make a motion to approve item 7B.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Item is approved. 4-0. Thank you.
Moving on to item 7. I believe there was a motion on the floor.
Yes, there was a motion.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 8, which is the superintendent's report. I'll kick it off to Superintendent Sidoria.
Fantastic. Thank you, trustees. I will be reporting briefly on leadership and community, learning and development, health and safety. It has been 11 days of school out of 180. We'll also talk a little bit about our California Standard for Teaching Profession Standard 2, as well as just the educational health of students in the report that you will be receiving under this section of learning and development. So on the next slide there, you'll just see some photos of our community across the district. Again, it's only been the 11th day of school. And so I know some of you may not had a chance to be on campus yet. I think, Bronwyn, you were able to go to our back to school night. Jenny, you're experiencing the 11 days of school personally with your children attending Los Robes Ronald McNair. And I know there'll be other opportunities as we share daily events that are happening across our school sites for trustees to be able to attend. But things have been going smoothly, and the things that need to be worked out, staff at the school sites are mitigating those problems every single day, which we are truly grateful in partnership with the central office. I want to emphasize that we, as a collective, are focusing on CSTP number 2 for all staff which is to create and maintain effective environments for student learning. This is a standard that's specifically for teachers in their evaluation. But as a district, we emphasize this in our welcome back that every employee, adult on campus, is to take ownership of this standard specifically, welcoming each other and welcoming students and families. We can all play a role in making sure that we implement this CSTP number 2, and we will be evaluated on this as well. What does it look like specifically? These are the specific elements of CSTP number 2, where bullet point number 1 we can all do is promote social development and responsibility within a caring community where each student is treated fairly and respectfully. I know there's also been conversations amongst the board in regards to doing a presentation to indicate how our subgroups of students, our Black and Brown children, our children who identify as under the LGBTQ+, how are we providing a safe place for all members of our community to be able to take risks and learn. And so we will be developing a report to share that with you. In regards to the educational health of our students, this is an executive summary of the report, the lengthy report that you all will be hearing from staff this evening, and we'll touch upon it some more when we actually are at that point. But we are going to be emphasizing that we've had the strategic plan implemented about 3 years ago, along with the fact that we are now going to be able to share with you the most current data that we've received from the state testing in 21-22. And then more importantly, making sure that we are going to have systems in place to monitor progress. In regards to leadership and community, just some few highlights here. We've really been focusing on our family engagement under our talent strategy and engagement branch of district office. Our school sites have been doing some innovative work, specifically on the left, Los Robles, Ronald McNair, have created a chemistry by mixing business with pleasure, doing SSC business-like meetings, in addition to creating some activities for families to spend time around with each other, asking questions, being able to have dialogue around kiwi crates. So they get the business done at the beginning of the meeting, and then they have opportunity to pull in activities for the students and their families to work around. And then you see our family engagement coordinator, Gabe Anguiano, along with Berenice, the outreach coordinator at Bellhaven, facilitating a cafecito with our families. And what we've been able to, with the talent strategy engagement branch of central office and the district is working on, is trying to create parent ambassadors. And so any family member who's watching this and you're interested in wanting to be an ambassador, on the next slide here, we're looking for any family member, guardian of a Ravenswood City School District student to support their child's programming at the school and also at the district level. And we have more information on our website about that. We've held back to school nights at our schools. Trustee Alexander was at Bellhaven yesterday and actually visited a former student. Oh, yeah, that's right. Actually, you were, I saw you ahead of me as well. I shadowed a 6th grader at RMS there at the bottom and had that experience of going into each of the classrooms. I actually shared with the middle school team, I would be so excited to be a 6th grader with the energy and the excitement that those teachers brought to the table. And more importantly, offering their time to be contacted, and families were able to share numbers and emails to be able to have immediate conversations if there are any questions with the teachers. Cesar Chavez, Ravenswood Middle School. What was I saying? Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we are excited about the beginning of the year having launched. And then around health and safety specifically, you know, we've had a heat wave and we've been able to successfully monitor individual students' conditions, encourage students to stay hydrated with drinking water, allowing frequent breaks to have access to liquids. And then just monitoring the activities outside, and then if shade is needed, staying indoors or finding shaded area. Recently, Senator Becker visited the Cesar Chavez Ravenswood Middle School and donated a portable air conditioner. He also did that for his son's classroom at MA, and then also provided water that children were actually really excited about grabbing. But the air conditioner was used was placed in the dance room. It was too hot to do any activities in there. So now they are able to use that space again. We also, just to make sure everyone is informed, with the construction, you can see photos here. Construction is happening at our middle school. We are going up and it's happening right before our eyes, even though you don't see it every day behind the black screens. But we do recognize that the construction does make it challenging to have secure entry points. And so we do have professional security at 3 of our entry points at the middle school. And then, breakfast and lunch is a hit these days. I think, we have about 90% of our students eating. That's how it was at the beginning. It is still the beginning of the year. The first few days of school, we had increased percentage of students participating in breakfast and lunch, which is fantastic. And so even staff are excited about the options that are made available. Less prep time for them too. And all of our students are eligible for breakfast and lunch for free. Thank you.
Do you have any questions or comments regarding this presentation?
Are you sure that wasn't a rice cake? It said popcorn cake, looked like a rice cake to me, but thank you.
Can you put up the slide and zoom in so we can spend a 2-minute just examining whether it was accurate or not?
Through the chair,
Yes.
are we, I know that per the state, all students are eligible for free and reduced lunch, but are we also asking our parents to fill out the application to make sure that we get the funds from the state that come with it?
I need clarification on that. Well, do you have the response to that question? If we're filling out the forms to ensure, but I don't.
The process changed actually a couple of years ago. So there's now 2 ways for students to be identified as eligible for free or reduced price lunch. Although actually, more relevantly, the state last year changed their policy to allow all students to participate in free
Right.
lunch at schools.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are still collecting the forms. We're also direct cert matching students. So using sort of student information to match it with the state database to identify which students would be eligible, sort of that binary to track percent free or reduced price lunch over time.
The-
That big question, I may have answered the wrong question.
It's my understanding that yes, free and reduced lunches for all, free lunches is for all students across California, right, regardless of income level. But it's also my understanding that if you get the larger percentage of those applications that actually gets filled out, the more money the district can receive from the state. And so we still want to encourage the parents to fill out the free reduced application in order to continue to receive those funds.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there's sort of 2 ways through which that comes. One is our federal funding. So Title I programs are still tied to the
Right.
percent of students who are eligible. So it is that's exactly right. Parents filling out those forms who are sort of eligible or what would have been eligible for free and reduced price lunch. That brings in $1,000, $2,000 per kid beyond. And the second thing is there's this community eligibility provision, which we've been using for the last few years, which allows us a greater reimbursement rate and allows us to expand the number of meals we're able to offer to different groups. So this year, for example, we've also started offering meals to organizations like Hope Horizon and sort of getting more quality food out into the community, which is good, not just from a helping kids be healthy perspective, but also for the school lunch department's bottom line. The more meals we serve, the more revenue we bring in, the more money we're able to invest in healthy quality food.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would just again like to highlight Senator Becker's visit to our schools. He called me up and he said, "How's Ravenswood doing with this heat wave?" I said, we could be doing better if we had an AC unit in every classroom. And we're able to keep our kids hydrated. And so although he did bring an AC unit with them for us to use in a shared space and some water, I'm wondering us internally what we can do to invest in these portable AC units for these heat waves just moving forward, right? It really does help alleviate the uncomfortable nature of, it doesn't happen often, right? It's once or twice a year. But how much of the future bond money or current money can we allocate to buying portable AC units? I know some of our new and modernized buildings have AC units integrated, but that's not necessarily going to be in every single classroom and space or that we're using today. So it'd be good to think about what we can do.
Through the chair. What we could do is potentially look into the cost. I'm not sure how much they actually cost, but instead of maybe having one for every room, we create cooling spaces like in the multi-purpose rooms.
Right.
And that's
So-
exactly what the middle school did in the science labs that are modernized and have the air conditioning. The
Right.
principal created cooling spaces during their lunch and brunch time, and kids were playing games in there.
I would also like to request, I know that our own staff also kind of prepared with having extra water bottle cases available for all the school sites. But I would love to see them in visible areas so students can grab and go. Like if they're just in the front office or whatnot, students may not know they're available or go to them. But as you noticed when we were there, when they saw the stack of water bottles, they all rushed to them, right? So I think just making them available in very high visible areas would be great. So students know they're available to them. Cause I know we also have our own inventory for this, to prepare for this heat wave. So let's just make sure they're in visible areas so that they have easy access.
So I agree with the aspects of having access to water, but I also want our district to be mindful of the use of single-use plastics. So is there a possibility that maybe we can invest in like district water bottles or something else?
Yeah, so we do have water fountains that are installed that water bottles can fit right in there and be refilled. So we've done that. They're located in all of our gyms.
Through the chair, I'll also say that just from experience, I believe that the TK kids and the kindergartners last year at Castano all had their own water bottle that they used every day and that my son brought home at the end of the year. And I also know that at most of the school sites, all of the kids knew to bring their own water bottle and they know where to go to fill it up. So it's something that I know my kids said that they had access to, and also they were handed water bottles physically during the heat wave. So I think our staff and our principals have been doing a really great job keeping them hydrated and stay cooled. So thank you so much for all of the staff and the principals and the leadership for doing that for our kids this week.
So what I witnessed at the middle school looked slightly different. I'm sure our staff and our principals are doing a great job in going out of their way and handing out water and directing. But Superintendent Sidaria witnessed the excitement and eagerness of our students because a water bottle a day versus throughout the day. So whether that's a water bottle to use at a fountain or a one-time use bottle during these extreme heat waves, we have to be prepared, and I would think be double prepared for this moment. And our teachers and principals are also having to do with just daily operations, right? So more during this time to me seems like the best way forward. We need to keep our kids hydrated so they can be focused in class. Thank you.
And also the potential of using something like box waters,
Box water, yeah.
all other alternatives, unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to see, and that's fine. But as long as we're being also conscious about our commitment to green practices would be good.
Through the chair, since I'm on that green committee, I agree 100% with President Latu. I'd like to get rid of single-use water bottles and go with something like box water or district-provided refillable water bottles, or maybe with school logos on them. I think RMS might have something like that.
CCRMS.
CCRMS might have something like that.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments? Wonderful. Let's move on to item number 9, which is the Ravenswood City School District Data Review and
Great.
Vital Signs.
Yes, so you all have a lengthy packet in front, and we have a team that will support us in presenting information to the trustees. This presentation, in a sense, is to get a sense of our vital signs here in Ravenswood City School District to understand the educational health of our students, and then how we are going to adjust our practices. So the agenda, we'll be focusing, we'll do an executive summary, just quickly going over that, as well as the mission, vision, values, and our story of how and where we are, how we got here. We will share a little bit background information about the vital signs, street data, as well as reviewing our 21-22 data from our state testing from last year. And then more importantly, how are we going to respond? The team that's going to help us present this information is our Assistant Superintendent, Sarah Stone, our Data and Assessment Coordinator, Austin Batson, and our Strategic Projects Coordinator, Joy Shen. In regards to our executive summary, I briefly shared this in the superintendent reports. We are in our 4th year. Just 3 years ago, we implemented the strategic plan. It was interrupted for obvious reasons. But we are in a prime position to be able to execute now our strategic plan and emphasize our priorities and work towards our priorities. We want to be very transparent in the fact that the data that we're going to show you is quite sobering. It's similar to, I'm sure, other data across the nation in California specifically, and we did show decline in our performance. In response to that, we are very strategic and have a plan and how we're going to move forward, emphasizing the need that we must progress monitor to ensure that we're moving our strategic priorities forward and have positive outcomes for children. We are going to begin. Next. So we all know our mission is to empower, as I mentioned in our theory of action, empowering our students to think critically and creatively in their education with the skills and mindsets necessary to successfully fulfill their unique potential. There are core values that we want to emphasize to help us ensure that we empower our students. And more importantly, we need to execute these core values. Our 6 priorities, I'm sure the trustees are well informed. However, we are going to emphasize specifically here SP1 and also SP2. Our theory of action, as we presented in our first board meeting, is to also emphasize SP1 and SP2. And so Sarah will begin to share our story.
Thank you, Superintendent Sidaria, and thank you, board members and President Latu. I'm excited to be able to present to you for the first time tonight. I think that I've made it very clear that I was very excited to be offered the position as assistant superintendent. And one of the main reasons why I was so excited is because of the rich history of East Palo Alto. And so I wanted to start the presentation tonight just honoring the land that we are on, which is the Muwekma Ohlone land, and just honoring the fact that we are on this land. The people in this land have provided us with this rich history, and we need to honor it every time that we come together. Also, I'm very aware of our story. When I was offered the position, one of the first things that Superintendent Sidaria gave me was a history of East Palo Alto. And
We know that in order to plan for our future, we actually have to acknowledge and learn from our past. And we've had a lot of change over the last years in Ravenswood. At one point, there were a mix of schools, K-8s, one middle school. There was a huge history of activism in this area, and many obstacles that the community has had to overcome. And it's consistently a very strong community. Today, we have, as it's been brought up a few times tonight, Cesar Chavez Ravenswood Middle School, which came together in 2018-19 and actually opened in person for the first time last year with 6 through 8 after COVID. We now have 3 incredible elementary schools that were consolidated from 5 schools. And what's really exciting, and one of the reasons why I was excited to come to this district, is that the schools really promote things that are very important, I believe, to me personally, but also that really encourage and enrich the lives of children, those being multilingualism, the arts, and STEM. So we know that with culturally and linguistically diverse communities like ours, there are incredible assets and resources. And the last few years have been incredibly challenging. The entire world in 2019-20 had to shift to emergency learning. We know that in Ravenswood, there was the approval of school mergers, and at that point, standardized assessments were canceled. In 2020-21, the entire year was full distance learning. Again, incredibly challenging, not only for Ravenswood, but the entire world. Even with that, there was the ability to have an in-person summer school program here in Ravenswood. Again, though, standardized assessments were not administered. Last year was the first year after COVID hit, where schools came back fully in person. Again, this was the first time for some of our schools that were merged over the pandemic to come back in person as one site and one community. And that included the Willow Bellhaven mergers, the Brentwood Castano mergers, as well as the CCRMS, 3 grades all coming together for the first time on one campus. This was the first year in 2 that standardized assessments, like the one that we're going to talk about tonight, were administered. And it was also the rollout of the new evaluation system, which is actually another reason why I was very excited to come to this district, because it's innovative and new and different. This year, we are opening the year with a new organizational chart. We are in the 2nd year of the evaluation. And as Superintendent Sudaria has mentioned in previous meetings, we are really focused on 3 things this year: the instructional core, anti-racism, and the teacher observation and feedback cycles. The other thing that we're really focused on, and something that we're going to present a lot more about tonight, is using what's called street data. We are a part of a consortium of schools working with Shane Saphir, who wrote the book Street Data, to really understand the different levels of data that can be used to inform the educational health of our students. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that. So our goals: educational health. What does that mean? Well, we know that our focus areas are students being powerful readers and writers who use literacy across content to share their ideas and make meaning. We know that we want students to see themselves as mathematicians and use those skills and their understanding of the content to solve problems and have strong practices that they're using to solve those problems. And I think ultimately, in order for those 2 things to happen, one of the most important things is that students feel safe and connected to the school, that they have trust in the community at the school, and that this will allow them to have a sense of agency and a sense of belonging. And in order for us to realize this and to really ensure that these goals are happening, we know we have to continuously monitor the educational health of our students. That means that we have to look at their academic, their social, their emotional, and their physical well-being consistently throughout the year. And this is a goal. This is an opportunity. So I have two quotes here that I think are really important when we think about this opportunity, because as we think about monitoring the educational health of our students, we have to look across different types of ways to monitor. We can't just look at one thing. And so I really, really like these quotes. One by Shane Saphir, who wrote Street Data, as well as Listening Leader, which is a book that we're reading with our manager team during our leadership trainings. And another quote by Ibram X. Kendi. And I'm actually going to read them because I think they're very powerful quotes. The purpose of assessment should be to help students shine, to showcase learning, brilliance, and criticality. That was a term coined by Goldie Muhammad. To elevate their voices and engage in public reflection. It is not to sort, classify, categorize, marginalize, shame, or otherwise diminish their humanity. And the other quote, what if we realize the best way to ensure an effective educational system is not by standardizing our curriculum and tests, but by standardizing the opportunities available to all students? And so at the core of these two quotes, I believe, is an opportunity and a call for ensuring that we're creating equitable experiences and classroom experiences for our kids. So in order to understand the educational health of our students, we also have to figure out what is really the purpose of assessments and testing. As a young teacher, way back in the early 90s, I often would think to myself, what do my kids know? And what are they able to do? And how do I know? How am I aware of that? So as a teacher, I leaned on figuring out, how do I assess that? So if we really think about the purpose of assessments, it's really for teachers to inform their practice so that they know what kids know, what they're able to do, and what needs to happen next. It should be timely, and it should offer information so that teachers can plan their instruction really well. It gives also an opportunity for kids to know how they're doing. It helps them to build, again, that agency and that sense of efficacy that they can and they will learn. It also, and this has happened, let's see, a little bit after I was a brand new teacher, under some of the accountability systems that were federal and state. It also can hold educational systems accountable for the work that they're doing with kids. But that is only one part of a really strong data and assessment system. So there really are two types of assessment. One will give you data which are lagging indicators. They tell the story of what happened in the past. They do not provide us with actionable information that we need necessarily, but they definitely represent the undeniable truth about performance of students. And then there are leading indicators, assessments that give you information that's predictive and can drive future performance, the ones that teachers can use to really plan instruction. And these shed light on students' learning needs so that teachers can address their needs, determine what supports they need. And this also can help our system in terms of aligning the best resources, practices, and creating policy. Reviewing both lagging and leading indicators is an important part of a well-balanced progress and performance monitoring system. They both need to be present. And we know that accountability exists. In California, our district is accountable to the state, and what we report on every year are these different areas: academic performance, academic engagement, and conditions and climate. So we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of vital signs and street data. So when you go to the doctor, they check your vital signs. Every single time you go to the doctor, I actually had to take my son to the doctor yesterday. They checked his vital signs. They check for body temperature, blood pressure, pulse, breathing rate. They do this every single time because they want to check along the way about the health of the child or the health of the adult. They don't just do one big test at the end and say, oh, there's heart failure, or, oh, there's a problem. They are checking along the way, and that gives them information about how to best treat and support the patient. So we need to do the same thing with our students. We need to be able to check along the year, not just at the end of the year, but along the way, the educational health of our students. And this is what we would call progress monitoring. So when I think about this, I think about we're checking the students' vital signs. How are they doing academically, socially, emotionally, and in terms of their health? And how do we know? What are we checking for? Again, we need to have both lagging indicators and leading indicators to really understand how students are doing. What we're going to report on tonight are the lagging indicators. We're going to be talking about the CASP assessment, which is at the end of the year. If we only ever check that and we don't check along the way, we're missing the whole point of the educational health of the students. We're missing their vital signs. So in street data, Shane Saphir and Jamila Dugan talk about 3 different levels of data. And these 3 different levels of data are the data that we need to really use to inform how we are doing as a system, how teachers are doing in their classroom in terms of meeting the needs of kids, and then making decisions based on those things. So they talk about satellite data, which again, CASP data, our LPAC data, our reclassification data, things that we report onto the state. Those are all really lagging indicators. They talk about something called MAP data. And MAP data is a little bit closer to the ground, a little bit closer to the students. And that's the data that can actually be used either as a lagging or a leading indicator. It can go either way. So if it's a lagging indicator, again, it's telling the story of what happened before. But if it's a leading indicator, it's really about how are you using this information to inform practice? How are you as a teacher knowing what your kids are able to do after you've taught something and then making some decisions about what you do next? So things like this can be Lexile levels, running records can be used in this way, rubric scores. We're going to talk a little bit about an assessment that we're bringing to the district this year, iReady. Can also look at attendance patterns and other types of engagement data. And then the super duper leading indicators that they talk about in the book Street Data are actually street level data. Street level data is really about on the ground understanding where students are, what their needs are, what the family's needs are, and really actually monitoring day to day what students are doing. So we think about that as having conversations with students, which we call maybe empathy interviews, or families. What is it that you want to learn? What do you feel like you are learning? And what do you need next? What support do you need? Looking at student work directly, looking at students writing, looking at how students are solving math problems. And Fountas and Pinnell data, which is reading data, can be seen this way too. Doing classroom observations of instruction, seeing where kids, who's doing the thinking in the classroom. Is it the teacher doing the thinking? Is it the students doing the thinking? And then again, looking at some patterns around attendance and suspension and things like that. Again, we need all 3 of these levels to really understand the educational health of our students. And so what we're going to be doing this year throughout the year is reporting on all 3 of these levels.
Through the chair, are we able to ask questions okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about why suspension rates wouldn't be considered a leading indicator, given that I think it would be able to, per your description, it would be able to shed light on addressing like risk and making changes to support services if someone is an individual is.
Yeah, so suspensions could be seen either as a lagging or a leading indicator, depending on how you're looking at that data. If you're looking at end of the year suspension data, like how often a school suspended or for what reasons, that's more of like the story that happened. But if you're looking regularly at what's happening, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but through something called a coordination of services team, where you're seeing, oh, wow, this student seems to be coming up for suspension quite a bit. That's leading. That's a leading indicator, and you can make plans around that. So it can be seen in both ways. Attendance is a similar kind of situation where you could look at it at the end of the year and go, okay, this is our chronic attendance and our chronic absence rate. Well, that happened. Or you can look at it weekly, daily. Who are the kids that are consistently absent? What are the reasons for it? And really put some supports around it.
Right. And my point with that is I hope that we consider that. And you're saying we're going to learn more
Yes.
about that as we go.
Yeah.
So I'll hold off on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of these things we're not going to report on tonight specifically, but these are a part of the vital signs checks that we're going to be doing throughout the year and reporting on.
Thank you.
So here's our plan, actually.
Oh,
Oh, more questions? Sorry.
trustee, Alexander.
Go ahead.
Just a really quick question on the map and street level data around running records and F&P.
Yeah.
So the students use iReady and it just gives a rough idea. And then if the teachers want something more deeply knowledgeable, they can do an F&P to get more information.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, if I could just do a little aside, this is where I get really excited. So like you'll see, I get really excited about this. The thing about F&P is that the reason why it exists is so that teachers can sit next to kids and hear them read and understand what their needs are. It was really never meant to be a map level data assessment. It was meant to be, hey, I'm really struggling to help this kid. What do I do? Let me pull them and do an assessment to see what they need. So I'm really excited that we're going to be using it in that way. And it gives the teachers an opportunity to actually really use that data effectively throughout the whole year and as it's meant to be. So just going a little bit deeper into the data that we are planning on collecting. So annually, as I said, we are accountable to collecting certain data. We will continue to do so. Standardized assessments such as CASP, our LPAC and reclassification data, overall attendance patterns, suspension rates are some of the things that we are definitely going to continue to collect and report on.
I have a question.
Yes.
So it's one of the data points that I know historically we've collected is CHEC's California Healthy Kids
Yes.
Survey. I know that last year we did not administer it for a fault on us, but we didn't get the
Right.
amount of
Right.
data that we needed.
Yeah.
So
We-
is CHEC going to be added to this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we will definitely continue to use chicks. And what I would say about chicks is that it can be seen as a satellite level. It could also be seen as street level because it's actually how people are giving us information consistently. If we use it well, if we use those types of assessment or surveys consistently, then we can know right then on the ground what we need to do. So we've been talking a lot about, we have the end of year chicks data that we'll definitely continue to look at, but we also want to see, so different schools are going to be collecting empathy interviews, which is similar to that. And then what are we learning from that throughout the year as well? But we're doing both. So we should definitely make sure that gets added to this so it's clear. So back to the map level data. What we're really looking at is how students are doing right now academically. And to Trustee Alexander's point, it's something that gives us some information. It will definitely be a diagnostic tool to see where students might need support in reading and math. But really at the street level is where we really get the most information about their learning. So iReady, which is a new assessment that we're using this year, the middle school, I think, just completed giving their first battery of iReady in reading and math. That will give us some data to look at. All of the schools will be completed with iReady by the end of September-ish. And you'll see that in a little while. We're going to continue to look at current daily attendance data and other engagement data, which includes suspension rates and the types of data like that you would find in a chicks survey. And then at a street level, we're going to, each school site is actually telling us what it is that they're going to be looking at and collecting. And we'll be doing some presentations about what they're finding in terms of their own street level data. But some of these could include looking at student work using rubrics, doing empathy interviews and surveys, classroom observations. And again, we need all three to be able to understand where our kids are in terms of their educational health. All right, here's where it gets exciting. So we're going to look at our data from the 2021 school year. Again, this is our satellite level data. In this presentation, we'll go through our student demographics. We will talk about the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress state assessments, which include the Smarter Balanced English Language Arts Assessment, the Smarter Balanced Math Assessment, and the California Science Test, or the CAST. We are also going to take a look at our reclassification information, our attendance rates, and I'll explain the asterisk when we get there, and our suspension rates. So this chart right here shows some information about the students that we serve in terms of race and ethnicity, and in terms of the languages that they speak or identify as their home language.
Are these demographics based on the county demographics?
Yeah, do you want to answer that? Sure.
Hi, thank you. These were reported based on the state level categorizations, but I believe by parents as they registered their students.
So I see that the second largest one, aside from Hispanic, is other Pacific Islander. Is there a reason why the Samoan and other Pacific Islander are separate when Samoan is also considered Pacific Islander?
I was going to say, I believe that's the state designation. That's how the state of California, those are the state of California provided demographics.
And American Samoa, it says Samoa on there. So American Samoa and Samoa are separate countries, but in this designation, it's talking about Manu Samoa. So that is why I was wondering why American, they'd be considered because they're a protectorate of America. That's a good point.
We can find out that information for sure. We can get a better understanding of how the state organizes
Yeah,
this.
because I get that the state says that, but if we're gonna be very intentional about how we collect data, I think that being a Pacific Islander Tongan and having 45% it says in home language is Tongan,
Right.
having some type of representation of this data would be,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we'll take back to the data and assessment group. Any other questions since we're
We can move on.
okay, great, thank you. All right, so this is also some information that we wanted to share, and this is in terms of different student groups based on, again, how the state classifies this, and there's a little aside about homelessness and what that means according to the state. But there was a conversation earlier about collecting forms so that we're understanding students' economic status. Emerging bilinguals, we actually use the term in Ravenswood as emerging bilinguals instead of English learners, which I think is beautiful. And another reason why I'm excited to be here. When we talk about homelessness, it is an interesting, we had a lot of conversations about this, but how the state actually defines homelessness is students that are sharing housing with another person due to loss of housing or economic hardship, students living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, etc., and students living in cars, parks, public spaces are substandard housing. And then we look at our students who have IEPs, another term that could be used as students with disabilities, and also the number of foster youth that we're serving. And so this is the breakdown of our students by school in terms of race and ethnicity. And as you can see, the numbers are a little hard to see when they get past the 3%, but we can see the largest majority of our students. And again, this is our students by different schools in terms of those student groups that we talked about before. So we're going to talk a little bit about the California Smarter Balanced Assessments. And there's really two ways that you can look at these assessments. What we traditionally tend to do is we tend to look at percentage who are proficient or above. We often are looking at those percentages, and we look at them based on the different bands. So there is standard not met, standard nearly met, standard met, standard exceeded. And so often, and you'll see in this presentation tonight too, that we can look at the percentages of students in each one of those bands. Another way to look at the information from these assessments, and one that I actually prefer to use, is really looking at how far students are from standards met. We call that distance from standard. And so we're going to look at our data in two ways tonight. And the reason why I like to look at it as standard or distance from standard is because then you can actually more accurately measure growth. When you're looking at large percentages of students who are maybe at standard nearly met or standard not met, and you don't look at how far away they are from meeting the standard, it's hard to understand when we're making growth. And so we'll see tonight that by looking at it from distance from standard, we actually will better be able, if you think of it kind of like a temperature read, we'll be able to see how close they're getting to standard and how we're making that progress throughout the years. So another way to look at it, and this is this chart right here, is to look at the ranges. So every grade level for ELA and math has a set possible score, a raw score that you can get. For example, third graders, their raw score on the ELA assessment is between 2100 and 27 something, 2650. So you can see anywhere along there is the possible score. And along that, where you see the light to the dark, the light is below standard, the dark is above standard. And so you see that where that green is, that is where a student in third grade for ELA would need to be in order to be considered proficient. So you can see there's a really wide range across of where students can be in terms of where they are in terms of meeting standards. Similar with math, and it goes all the way from third grade to eighth grade in this range. So another example, minimum proficiency in math for an eighth grader would be 2,586. So here is our data from last year. And as Superintendent Sadaria explained, it's sobering, very sobering. So on district average, 64% of our students were below standard or did not meet standard. 24% were nearly meeting standard. 10% met standard and 2% exceeded standard. And this is in English language arts. If you look below, you'll see distance from standard where you see -99. That means on average, our students were 99 points away from meeting standard. And so you can see across, if we look at the different school sites, where students were in terms of English language arts. 99 points, exactly. So if you go back and look at the range here, you can see if they're 99 points away from, I'm sorry, my eyes are not very well, very good to 2,400, I think. You can see how far away they were, let's say in third grade, but it was an average of 99 points. And this is all of our kids, third through eighth grade.
So with the first one, the district average.
Yes.
The colors do not do it justice on here. So I can easily say that 12% either met standard or exceeded standard.
Correct.
So that means that 88% did not meet standard or nearly met standard.
Yes.
And with that, though, if you look at the 99 points from standard, indicates how far away from standard, which means not everyone is all the way to the left of that bar. And so we want to look to see what on average our students are.
Aren't meeting standards as well.
I just want to make the point that this is, yes, is sober. But just say every district, every state in the United States, every country in the world is looking at the exact same data loss from pre-pandemic. So while yes, it is summary, it is consistent across everything. Now, that doesn't mean
Right.
We have work to do. We have work to do.
We have a lot of work to do.
we don't do
A
enough.
lot of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do. Yes.
And historically, a lot.
Right, but this is kind of record breaking.
So was it pandemic.
No, absolutely. But even before pandemic, right? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but.
And through the chair, I would like to be able to dive into data even further to indicate of the students who did not meet standard, where did they fall? How far away from that green line are they actually? Because that means you could be 1 point below meet standard and still fall under.
It's not 1 point though.
Well, there are some students that's data that we can look at. So we want to look at the growth of individual students.
Above that line. Very easy, we started the instruction.
Exactly. Yeah, which is why I like to look at it this way. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly why I like to look at it this way, because then we can actually monitor growth. And there are students for whom they are a few points away, and that really targeted support will move the needle for them. And then we can focus more intensively on students that are farther away. So I'm going to show the math data, more sobering. I will say, and not to make excuses, but I will say across California, math data has gone dramatically in this direction. Dramatically, not just at
Through the
Ravenswood.
chair, that's because the math test is really a reading test.
Well, exactly. It is a reading test.
Fair.
And this is our science assessment. And science, just to be clear, is only given in 5th and 8th grade. And this is by grade level. So if we look again, on average, we're negative 99. But and again, the CASP is given in 3rd through 8th grade. So our 3rd graders, and I do just want to put this out there, these 3rd graders didn't ever have in-school instruction, a full year of kindergarten or 1st or 2nd grade. Sorry, they didn't have a full year of 1st or 2nd grade. But this is their data, and this is what we're looking at. And this is English language arts. And this is by grade level in math. Again, sobering. And this is by race and ethnicity. ELA. And this is race and ethnicity for math. So again, just a reminder of the ranges. And I think a really helpful graphic is on this page, which is those ranges, but it's showing where our students are on those ranges by average. And if you'd like for me to keep moving on, I will, but I know that this is data that you kind of have to dig into. And so I just want to give you a moment to really dig in. All right. I'm actually going to pass over to Joy to take us through this slide, and then Austin will be taking us through more of the slides. I'll be back soon.
Okay, so Assistant Superintendent Stone has walked us through how our students performed relative to the statewide standards last year, and looking at that through the proficiency and growth lens. But another perspective that we wanted to take was to understand that performance in the specific context that our students live and learn in, and the communities that we're a part of here. And because we recognize that the performance on assessments is structurally influenced by a lot of contextual. Oh, yes. Thank you. I'm not as tall. Because performance is structurally influenced by a lot of those contextual factors. So if we think about things like economic status, bilingual learners, IEP rates in our community, as well as the demographics of our student body. And because of that, it's useful for us to look at our results in comparison to schools that are similar to us and have similar characteristics. So to do this, what we did is we looked at the statewide testing data for all the schools in California, and we were able to create a predicted score for any school based on the level of student need as defined by some of these contextual factors. And then after doing that analysis, we can then compare how our schools did here in Ravenswood to what might be predicted for a school with characteristics like our schools have. So I'll turn it over to Austin now to walk us through that analysis that he did.
So this is the analysis here showing the peer schools compared to Ravenswood schools. I'm just going to kind of walk you through how to interpret this graph. The diagonal line here represents if a dot is on that diagonal line, the school is performing as well as its peer schools. If a dot is above the diagonal line, it's outperforming its peer schools. And if it's below the diagonal line, it's underperforming its peer schools. So on the left, you can see the English language arts for elementary. On the right, you can see the math for elementary. And you can see where each of our elementary schools lie in comparison to their peer schools. I can give you a second to process that.
To the chair.
Trustee Polito.
I noticed that Bellhaven is significantly closer to the line than our other two elementary schools. And are we doing a deep dive as to why there's such a huge difference and them being closer to that line than the other schools? And what practices can we learn from what Bellhaven is doing to kind of mirror that? And
absolutely. I think that's something we're going to look into. This was just the initial level of getting the data out
so
there.
we don't know yet. We don't have anything that really reflects. I mean, I would like to know what sets Bellhaven apart in that regard.
I can say that we went through this presentation with each principal and sat with them and talked it through. And that was one of the questions I asked them to consider. And so they are considering that, and they're going to be, and I said, our board members are going to ask us, what are you doing? And we're going to have to figure out what you're doing and see if that's something that's replicatable.
Right. Because I'm thinking we're doing professional development with everybody. We're kind of going through the same, process or strategy. So why is it, looking different from school to school in such a significant way? So, I mean.
But just another point on that topic, we actually have a slide. You can skip 2 ahead. Yeah, there we go. Some research on multilingual learners in particular. And so really wanted to highlight this as well. There's a host of research that shows that students in dual immersion programs like we have at Los Robles, Ronald McNair, they actually will score below their counterparts in other programs in the earlier years of their education as they're kind of first emerging into that language program. And then actually what you'll see in that same research is that those same students end up outperforming their peers later on. And so that's also what we've heard anecdotally from the team at the middle school as well, that those kids may be starting off with lower ELA scores coming out of that program, but then will end up kind of bridging that achievement gap later on. And so that's just another contextual piece we
Right.
wanted to highlight.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
I actually was reading ahead and I did read that, but then I was a bit thrown off because Castaño is not a dual immersion program and yet they're faring the same
Yeah.
way as Los Robles. That's why I followed up with that. But thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
absolutely. Let Austin get back to it.
Through the chair, just one little thing. I've spent a good deal of time in the Bellhaven classrooms because it's next to my house. There's exceptional things going on in in those classrooms. I cannot say that I can't compare it to the other schools because unfortunately I haven't had the opportunity to be in those classrooms as much. But I do see what's happening at Bellhaven. Just that's it.
Well, I'm just encouraging all of us to think of the why, right? What's different about what they're doing to the other schools. So thank you.
Absolutely. And this is the same analysis, but specifically looking at middle schools. So it's ELA on the left and middle schools on the right, or sorry, math schools on the right there. Math evaluations. Joy already discussed this slide here, but just talking about multilingual learners and how their performance changes over time. And that'll take us into some of our other indicators of satellite data. So our first one is about bilingualism in the district. This slide shows how both our enrollment and our how our learners, their bilingualism has changed over time. On the left, you can see that in the 2014-15 school year, we had around 3,400 students enrolled. Last year, we had around 1,500 students enrolled. And you can see that decline reflected in this graph. You can also see how the percentage of English learners or emerging bilingual students has changed in the district. Since 2014, total enrollment has declined by around 55%, while emergent bilingual enrollment declined by around 60%. This slide shows how our students who come into our schools initially fluent in English has grown over the time. Since 2015, there's been a steady increase in the number of students who come into schools and are classified as English only or already fluent in English. This is our last bit on here about for bilingualism, about students who are being reclassified as fluent English proficient, which again is the state's definition. From 2016 to 2021, every year we had about 20% of our students who were classified as fluent or reclassified as fluent English proficient. This past year, that fell to around 13%. One of our other indicators, our satellite indicators, is average days absent. This is incomplete data because we don't have data from the 2019 to 2020 school year because of the shift to emergency learning. But in the case of all 4 campuses, you can see that before the shift to emergency learning on the left, the average days absent was much lower. For all of our schools, it's increased since then. Our last bit of satellite data right now is on suspensions, and this is also very incomplete data. From 2019 to 2020, we didn't have a full school year's worth of data to report. And then from 2020 to 2021, there was no suspension data to report. So this is a satellite indicator that we want to keep looking at and have also the street level data as well. But right now it's an incomplete picture from the satellite perspective.
All right. So looking forward, we know that we are going to continue to look at our satellite indicators. And we also, just in terms of what we just reviewed, we know that we have a lot of work to do. It was mentioned a few times. And like all districts across California, we have seen a similar dip in terms of our data. And in fact, there was an article that was just written a few weeks ago about how students across the country really have seen on the NAEP, which is the national assessment, have gone down by about 2 years in terms of growth. So it is sobering for us, and it's also sobering for our entire country in terms of where students are. And it was what we were worried about when we went to emergency learning during the pandemic. Looking forward, we know we have a lot of growth that we can make. Again, it's an opportunity. It's also an opportunity for us to look at how are we, as Ibram X. Kendi said, how are we standardizing the opportunities for our students as opposed to just the curriculum and the assessments? And we are going to be checking our vital signs regularly, and we will be presenting that to you regularly. Not only will we be doing that here at board meetings, but we'll be doing that with principals after, and we'll show you the assessment calendar in a minute, but after certain moments in the year. And we'll be just discussing regularly how our students are doing. One way, we'll do this first and then I'll get to it. Sorry.
No worries. We'll tag team this slide. So the board, as you know, we've taken some action already to set us up to be successful in implementing new actions. So, and in partnership with the RTA, Ravenswood Teachers Associations, we have a new evaluation system, and we've restructured that so that it is meaningful, that we have site administrators going into classrooms, providing feedback, having that collaboration between the administrator and the teacher, so that we are constantly getting information about how to do day-to-day adjustments in how we're delivering instruction. We're maintaining and expanding our school leveling program, in regards to coaches, reading intervention teachers. We've provided extended school day and the school year with our summer programs, as well as with our middle school having the extended day. The board has made, that critical decision to do a reorg around our central office so that we can focus and prioritize improving instruction and ensuring that we have quality instruction across all of our schools. And then, we need to make sure that we are able to recruit and retain our team members who are effective, and to sustain them and keep them here, as we're constantly, I think, people are attracted to the work here, as well as the professional development that's provided. We just can't retain the individuals to sustain a living here. And so the increase in compensation, as the board has approved, is also our attempt to ensure that we have quality staff inside and outside of the classroom working with our students day to day. And so the actions that we'll be taking, led by our assistant superintendent, Sarah, will share.
So as we've mentioned before, we're really working on creating a strong data and assessment system, which is including the adoption of iReady, which is a TK through 8 assessment in ELA and math. And what I like about it being TK through 8 is that we can monitor a student from the time they come here in transitional kindergarten all the way through their time in 8th grade to see the kind of growth that they're making and what support they need. We are going to be leveraging the use of street data. I'll show that in a minute, but what school sites are going to be collecting in terms of their own street data and the information that's going to help them make their best plans and organize their practices around. We will have, and you'll see it, a coherent assessment calendar. And we're going to be doing systematic progress monitoring across the district. We're also going to be implementing something called the coordination of services team. And I have a slide that's coming up about what that is. And at some later date, we'll do a longer presentation about what that is. And we're reviewing and adopting curriculum that meets the needs of our students. Specifically this year, looking at our English language arts and our English language development curriculum. So again, beautiful graphic here of we adopted iReady. It's a diagnostic assessment, but it also can monitor standards and where students are along the way. Looking at student surveys, parent surveys, shadowing students, exit tickets in classrooms, oral language poetry, continuing Fountas and Pinnell, student work, walkthroughs, all of these things are really important street data elements. This is a coherent assessment calendar. It's teeny tiny here, but in the appendix, you can see it enlarged. And this assessment calendar actually shows when we're collecting street data, when we're collecting map data, when we're collecting our satellite data, and when in the year we're going to stop and check the vital signs. And so you'll see that there's 3 times in the year where we're checking vital signs. And so we will be presenting those vital signs at the board meetings around those dates. And we're also going to be, again, towards this, just that consistent progress monitoring, looking at classrooms together, walking through classrooms. When I go to school sites to meet with principals, we will be doing joint walkthroughs consistently and talking about the patterns that we're seeing. Here are some of the.
Through the chair. I think this is a question for people who've been here for a long time. Did we used to have iReady? I think we did at some point.
I know the answer. Yes.
Yeah.
What I will say about iReady is it's changed quite a bit since it was here before in terms of the type of assessment that it is. And it's not perfect. I would never say that any assessment is the be all end all, but it's one piece of the puzzle for us to use. So here is the street data that our schools are committed to looking at and collecting throughout the year. We really want to leave this up to the streets as it is very much on the ground data that they're using day to day to inform their practice. But we will be talking to them regularly about the street data and to your point, making sure that we're understanding what are the best practices that are being used at school sites that are seeing solid results. Just a note on here, shadowing a student is on here for everyone because I plan on actually giving the principal a morning or an afternoon. I will be acting as the principal that day so that they can shadow a student so that they can understand what it's like to be a student in their school. It's a practice that I actually did myself a few years ago prior to the pandemic, and I learned an incredible amount of information by following a student who was considered a newcomer to our country. So this is just a little bit about coordination of services team. What we are doing this year with the support of our educational services executive director and her team is implementing what we call the coordination of services team. Basically what that is regular meetings. Could be once a week, could be every other week at school sites to talk about the needs of students and to ensure that we're coordinating all the services for students in a strategic and an intentional way. Often, without something like this in place, you will see that we're trying to do interventions for students. We're trying to give them mental health counseling. We're trying to give them all of these different things. And what we end up doing is actually pulling them out of their core tier 1 instruction while we're trying to do all these interventions. A coordination of services team allows us to really look and be thoughtful and strategic about how we are supporting students when in the day those supports are put in place and ensuring that they're not pulled out of their tier 1, which is their first best teaching for those supports.
I have a question. With the student center cost team, is that on the district level or every single school site will have their own?
Yes, every school will have their own. And as a district, what we will do is take that information and make sure that we're aligning resources to the schools. So the schools are organizing their resources around the students' needs, and then we are also taking that information in to support them.
Yeah, because I remember we had a similar group at the middle school.
Yes.
That worked very well. So that's what it reminded me of.
And I do want to just name that the middle school really actually has this in place already.
Yeah.
They're not calling it a cost team, but it's their support team. And it is, they're implementing this. So we're bringing that out to all of the different schools.
Through the chair. So for the cost teams, I know you're going to go into it more depth later. This would be where the in the past, what we did was we would fill out an S2 and then it would go to an S3 and an S4 and an S5. And the following year we'd fill out an S2.
and it would go to an S3 and an S4. So this would hopefully take away that so that when we cost somebody, then everything can be wraparound and then it would follow the child year to year. So we're not reinventing the wheel every year with the child.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, exactly. In fact, not only will it follow the student year to year, it's also a way for us to monitor, again, those vital signs. Is what we're doing helping? And if not, what do we need to shift? The other thing that I like about this and the idea of collecting it at a district level is then when kids transition to middle school, they're not starting over in middle school again. And we can actually pass that information along to the high schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Trustee Polito.
Through the chair, I know this was a 62-page presentation. It went by so fast for me. Honestly, it did. It was a great presentation. To Trustee Alexander's point, I know this information is sobering, but I also think it's needed, right? So we can assess and address and improve. That way we can see progress. So although it is sobering, I'm glad we're having these conversations. They're needed. That's the only way, again, we can address and shift as needed. I know I was talking about what Bellhaven's doing differently, right? That's setting them ahead. But I would also encourage, and I know at one point we did it where we're looking also at specific classrooms and teachers and how they're performing with their students and what are they doing that also allows them, I would say even pair them up for coaching, right? You know, again, going back to those best practices, right? So not just as a school, but as like individual teachers who are excelling, who are leading, who are, you know, setting themselves apart with what they're doing with instruction in the classroom. So I also, I'm probably already on the to-do list I'm seeing you all shake your heads. So I'm happy to hear that, but monitoring is really important. I love that we're going to be getting reports on this and we're going to be constantly assessing this. This has me, again, although sobering, and I'm not excited about those results. I think, like I said, they're historically low for my time here, but this is how I feel, how we make that progress forward. So this is what I'm excited about. So thank you for this presentation. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
On the page 20 through the chair, page 23, it was the student demographics. I don't see, I'm just wondering how accurate it is, or is there one that's missing that's mixed races?
Sorry.
Yeah.
62 pages.
So on the left eyes, race and ethnicity. Just because I know for a fact we have more than one Asian Indian enrolled in our district.
Absolutely.
We have two.
So we have at least two.
Representation matters.
Sorry, through the chair, it's also a specific grade level. Like, is this for the whole school and it's a specific time, right? It's a specific time frame.
This was the whole district
As of what date, though?
earlier this week. I can go back and get the exact date. I pulled it on.
Maybe they didn't check the right box.
Well,
And-
we're talking about our trustee over here. Yeah. So I'm wondering, yeah. I don't know. I don't see,
No,
I know we do have a lot of multi-ethnic students. So I don't see that represented. This is just a completely something I noticed, little detail, not important.
Right. And I think
No, it's important.
Well, yes, important, but,
Well, I think students are allowed to check off the one they most identify with. So if they're mixed race, they'll
or does
check
this
off.
from parent enrollment survey?
this is from parents, and I know that the federal demographics has a mixed race category. I pulled this from the state level, and I'm not sure if the state level allows a checkbox or anything for mixed race.
And the state level is probably not updated with this year's paperwork, right? Is that correct?
Right. So this paperwork, whatever was in the system, our system at the time, is what's reflected there. So paperwork hadn't been entered yet or hadn't been updated, then someone wouldn't be represented in this. I can definitely dig into this and give a report, updated breakdown later. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would too.
Of course.
Through the chair, I will also just say, I think that this, I know you guys talked about it in the beginning, but I also just want to highlight that this is testing that hasn't been done for 2 years. And that's true that's a fact for all of the United States and the world. It's testing that has not been done for 2 years. So some of these students, like the 5th graders, had never taken a CAS test in their life. And at this point, 5th graders would have taken it at least once. 3rd graders would have been in distance learning for 2 years. And so this data is sobering, but it's also, that is an important fact of what we're seeing. And then the other thing is that's not quantifiable and maybe not mentioned is that, yes, we were in a pandemic and East Palo Alto was probably one of the worst hit. It was the worst hit in the whole county. And we cannot quantify trauma and we cannot quantify what kids felt for parents not having work or parents going to work every day because they had to, because they were essential workers. That's trauma we cannot quantify. We cannot quantify how many of these kids were taking care of their siblings or watching TV all day because no one was there to take care of them. Those are data points that we cannot quantify that affect data like this that we're looking at. And so while it is sobering, and I'm glad that we have it and it's a jump off, I am looking forward to the vital signs and street data and being able to see the growth and also hopefully seeing the absence rate go down as well. And to see how much kids can and do learn in our classrooms and to see that growth of what they're coming in with and then what they're leaving with at the end of the year. And I think that data is really important for us. And this state data, I mean, I work with students who take SATs and ACTs for college admissions all the time, test anxiety, right? So these kids don't have a chance to retake this test. They take it one time. And so there's a lot of factors here that we don't get to quantify, but yet we're looking at the data. So those are all things that I think that affect our district that we don't get to necessarily talk about or see in a graph. So, but thank you so much for the presentation. It did go by very fast and thanks for sharing.
Through the chair, just one other little tiny thing. I don't know what happened in 4th grade across the district, but wow, the LPAC 4th grade scores. 57% of students in 4th grade who took the LPAC came out as well developed.
Okay.
So reclassification soon for some of these kids, I think. That's great. 4th grade, you guys rock. Last year's 4th grade.
That's in the appendix, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Through the chair. Thank you for this presentation and this data. And I just want to encourage everyone because we keep saying this is sobering, which, okay, I get it. But to me, you know, I'm just non-traditionalist, but standardized testing, first of all, not a fan at all in any context, in any place, space, time, across any people, not a fan. I do not think what is tested matches what is learned, what is being taught. And it's definitely not assessing how things are being taught and the perspectives and experiences of people who are doing the teaching and doing the learning. So I'm not a fan. Now, with that, this is a data point, and I do understand that and appreciate it. But I don't want to become alarmed because of these numbers. So I appreciate that our district is looking at assessment, measurement, testing in a more holistic way, from a more holistic perspective. That is the route I think we should be moving in. And I think, you know, I agree with the other trustees here and saying kudos to that. And let's pump that up and keep that going. Let's become energized and re-energized towards those efforts. I particularly like this idea of street data. I have not read the book, but I think focusing more on qualitative data will allow us the opportunity to, number one, understand our students better. Again, understand how they're entering our classrooms so that we can understand how to engage with them to get them to where they need to be to become productive, engaging, you know, adults. And so it's funny because I was actually just maybe a month or two ago, I was having a conversation with my husband Tunde. And I pitched this idea. I was like, we need to do a documentary on Ravenswood alumni because y'all are some amazing folks. Literally, we were trying to find somebody to do some kind of design or something. And then I thought about who did our design, our new Ravenswood design. Like, that's a Ravenswood alumni, y'all, who is one of the top designers at Facebook, by the way. And then we were talking about Sergio, who is an amazing cinematographer, videographer, Ravenswood alumni. So I think it's interesting. There's so many. That was just two. Laura Nunez. Sorry, that's Ravenswood alumni. Okay, I'm just saying. But my point is that, again, this is a data point. It's a data point. Now, when we look at the trajectory and journey of our lives, there's so many touch points of engagement, so many touch points of investment. And I think the most important thing is to understand who our students are, again, what they're doing, what their experiences are, what strengths they're bringing into the classroom, and continue to build on those. So I think for me, something I would like to know or see more of, in these in-depth ways is, again, whatever we're using to understand when a student comes into this classroom, this is where they are. And then at this point, this is how much growth. These are the changes that we see in their progression and development versus something like this which again, I appreciate this, but I think that would be more helpful if I were thinking about how to design an educational experience for a student and looking at that, over the course of time. So let's keep finding tools and instruments to use for that and to get that type of qualitative and quantitative data. And so again, keep our spirits up. Just keep them up. Keep them up. We know what they say, but we also see what happens in real life. We got real life examples that live on this street of Ravenswood alumni. So that's it.
Thank you, Vice President Chabot-Maheen. Can we go to slide 29? So of the percentages, right? So the district-wide 964 students represents the completed amount of the ELA assessment district-wide, right? So that graph in itself represents 100% of 64 out of 100. Okay, so there's a couple of discrepancies in some of the data that's presented. So on page 30, there's 3 data points that don't add up to the full 100.
Doing it. Yeah. Are you talking about like the percentages
Yeah,
on
the
the chart?
percentages are off.
It's likely just a rounding thing, like the decimal points. So it'll be off by like maybe 1% if, a couple of them round up and it'll be higher than 100% total, or if they're round down. We can get you like the exact numbers of students, which is what's informing it, but it's probably just a rounding thing.
Okay, that's good for optics wise.
Yeah.
Another point with the vital signs and the iReady, since historically our district has used iReady in the past, and I know it's different than it is now, but I just want to emphasize that when we readopt things that we've historically done, I think that it puts a little bit more pressure for us as a district to make sure that we follow through with what those processes are, right? So that we can actually get some of the benefits in which, these things offer. And so that's why when I heard that iReady was historically used and then it wasn't, my thought is we're adopting it again. And so that's why I just want to emphasize that I will be watching very closely on that aspect of it. Aside from that, I think the presentation was really well put together, very informative. I look forward to the ways in which you all are going to story tell some of the issue areas in which aren't, like Trustee Bloom said, more on the qualitative side, but more on not the quantitative, but the qualitative side, like percentages of people who are needing mental health services, right? And how many have gone through the system or how many have gotten resources. And then that, initial reference isn't needed anymore, right? So I look forward to seeing how the district is going to be able to tell that narrative in a way that isn't victimizing to, where we were historically. And then my last point is I will bring up the race and ethnicity slide one last time. I look forward to our district staff. Now I just got to make this an appointment, but I think that if we're going to continue to create processes that are best for our district, we should also be reflective of who's currently part of this district and make sure that they're represented on there. And that is my endpoint.
How would that, are the forms provided by the state? Is that why the boxes are set up? Or are we able to modify?
Like, can you put in?
Yeah, that's
Last
what I'm
time I checked,
wondering.
You can put other and put.
So,
No, that's what I'm
so
wondering.
the state has a, Solomon Hill,
Mhm.
Executive Director of Technology.
Thank you, Mr.
Um,
Smith. Nice to meet you.
The state has a standard way of reporting race and ethnicity. There's also a federal way of reporting ethnicity. And we have some statistics around that too that aren't in the slide. It is standardized. It's given, parents are asked when they come, and we need to use that standardized data because that's how we actually have to report it to the state as well. We can do analysis based on the federal definition, which does have the mixed race category. The state does not have that in their data.
The
report.
state does not, but the county does.
Well,
Last time I saw it, the county does.
and
so
and
that's why I'm
again, because the feds have it, we actually do have that. We did not choose to report the data that way tonight, but we do have that information.
Okay.
So just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. Sullivan.
so we can include it
In
in
our student
future.
information system.
Yeah.
We-
Wonderful. As I see no other questions or comments, let's move on to item number 10, which is the
Thank you.
proclamation resolution number 2022/23-6 National Hispanic Heritage Month and Latinx Heritage Month in the Ravenswood City School District. I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve proclamation number 2022-2023-6.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Recognizing September 15th, 2022 through October 15th, 2022 as National Hispanic Heritage Month and Latinx Heritage Month in the Ravenswood City School District. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month and Latinx Heritage Month in the United States are observed each year from September 15th to October 15th to celebrate the histories, cultures, and contributions of Americans whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas the month serves as an important reminder of how much strength we draw from our immigrant roots and our values as a nation of immigrants. Whereas the month includes the Independence Days of several Latin American countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, Chile, and Belize. And whereas the Latinx community is exceptionally diverse and includes Indigenous people from throughout the Americas. And whereas the Latinx community comprises the largest racial or ethnic group in the United States and in Ravenswood City School District, with the largest population living in California and represents 80.3% of students in Ravenswood City School Districts. And whereas members of the Latinx community have made countless contributions to the United States economy and culture, serving in all branches of the armed forces as dedicated public servants and as leaders in education, healthcare, business, and entrepreneurship and other professions. And whereas the Heritage Celebration provides a wonderful opportunity to highlight the diversity of the Latinx community and its many enriched contributions to the Ravenswood City School District. And now therefore be it resolved, Ravenswood City School District has an important role to play in educating students and the larger community about the diversity of the Latinx community and its contributions to our local community, the state of California, and the United States of America.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Resolution carries 5-0.
Moving on to item number 11, which is from the business department. We will have a public hearing on AB 1200, public disclosure for the RTA tentative agreement from the date of ratification by the board through June 30th, 2023.
I move to open the public hearing.
There's no presentation per se. So specifically, this is allowing the public to give input on the budget implications of this TA. And then so we would open it up for open the hearing for public comment.
Okay. Did they already open?
No, so
We will officially open the hearing
Mhm.
for item 11A. Any speakers? Do we have any questions or comments from the public? Now is your time to speak.
Yeah, this is a public hearing right now. This is comment time.
this comment is specifically if there's any questions about the budget regarding the approval of
I
this
thought
agreement.
we opened the public hearing, which means we hear from the public.
That's correct.
Oh, okay, because I think Ms. White asked if she can speak now. Was that your question?
Do you want to speak
Yes.
now or for the item 11B? So I think 11B.
But isn't this the public hearing?
Well, as I see no speakers, I will move to close the hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Officially closed. Now moving on to 11B, the consideration to approve the AB 1200 for the RTA tentative agreement. Do we have any public comment? Before we vote, I will open the floor to any public comment.
Sorry.
Ms. White, are
Speaking
you?
as RTA president?
Yes, ma'am.
5 minutes on the clock.
Yes. I need whole three. Good evening, board, superintendent, members of the community, teachers. Just want to say thank you to the district, the RTA negotiations team, as well as the district negotiation team. We had a long year last year with revamping the evaluations, revamping the salary schedules, and we said that we would do a soft launch, come back, think about what worked, what didn't work. And we did that over the summer. So we spent some time doing that. We had some new team members come to the table, Joan O'Neill, who's our new HR director, and she's been instrumental in creating something that's very helpful. It's the CAG. People see it later. So I just want to also say thank you to all the members of the district team for making sure that we had the correct numbers on the money, where things were going, the budget, and as well as the RTA team, Andrea Reyna, negotiations chair, Martin Sanders, special education, Melissa Brown, art teacher, Jessica Cox, dual immersion, Mary Trinko, instructional coach at the district office. So just want to say thank you to the district, to the community, and to the teachers for making sure that we continue to pay our educators the salaries that they deserve, as well as the monumental thing about the health benefits that we were able to get this year. And that is probably one of the most important things to me. So people understand this. Last year, as a single mom with 2 kids, I paid $1,605 every month out of my paycheck. Currently, with this new plan, I'll be able to pay about $600, $700 a month. So we're talking about 65 to 75% going to health benefits. So that, along with the increased salaries, is what's game changer, because now you can come here as a single or a family or a 2-party, and you can stay and you're not worried about a third of your check going to healthcare. So just thank you to everyone for continuing to make the negotiations table a true negotiations table and not contentious. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comment? I will open it up to the board. As I see none, I will entertain a motion for item 11B.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 11B.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to 11C, which is the consideration to approve the tentative agreement with RTA from the date of board ratification through June 30th, 2023.
Correct.
I will entertain a motion for item 11C.
I'll make a motion to approve item 11C.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 12, which is board reports and communication.
Through the chair, I know there is a day of service on Sunday. There's a day of service on Sunday that is happening all over the city. And I think there are a few projects throughout the city that's happening. I think there's one at Izzy Education, the library, and I think out in the Baylands somewhere. Sorry, I'm not exactly sure. But it's through YCS, so Youth Community Services. So if there are youth or members of the community that want to participate in that way, check out Youth Community Services' website, and they have a bunch of different areas where there will be volunteers. Thank you.
Through the chair. I had the honor and privilege of attending both the back to school nights for Bellhaven and for CCRMS. It was wonderful seeing all the parents and the students all being engaged with the teachers and the staff at the schools. I look forward to the back to school nights for the other two schools. Also, for the public's information, the Bellhaven School Field is open every single day after school hours until 8:30 at night. That's when the gates are locked for anybody to go walk the track, play soccer with the family, baseball fields there, tennis courts. So just know that the Bellhaven School is open and welcome to families to recreate there after the school hours are over.
Wonderful. Anyone else? I'll also just like to say a reminder to the board members that when we have subcommittee meetings, whether it's for curriculum or whatever, this is also a good time to provide an update to the rest of the board members on matters that were discussed in that meeting so that the other trustees are also in the know.
To the chair, I have a report from my subcommittee. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We had a facility subcommittee on Tuesday and we talked about many of things, but one of them in relation, because Bellhaven, we're talking about Bellhaven, we did make Bellhaven a priority project as far as facilities are concerned, modernizing, adding new spaces, and we're kind of in maybe the first or third draft of what that design will look like. So it's really exciting. I know that staff will share formally with the entire board, and then we're going to be sharing it with our internal Bellhaven team, and then at some point our community in Bellhaven so that they're also aware what's happening there. What else can I say? I think that's it. That's all I can say right now that I can remember.
Thank you. And also Superintendent Sudari, if you can also highlight the open houses that we will have over the next couple of weeks to the public.
Yes, so every Tuesday of this month from 4 to 5 o'clock, we'll make sure that we'll put the Zoom links out there, but we are offering virtual office hours for the community to learn about the project that we would like to do here at 2120 Euclid to ensure that we're able to stand our own 2 feet and continue to provide some stellar programs for our students and afford to retain high quality staff here.
Wonderful. With that being said, that concludes. The next regular board meeting will be held on September 22nd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. and open session will be at 7:15. I will adjourn the Ravenswood City School District Governing Board meeting of September 8th at 9:33 p.m. Thank you.